this Zoom presentation will be recorded. Sarah will be recording this presentation, so then we can get this onto the AWA+D YouTube channel. So great to write notes down, but there will also be a video of this as well. I would like to introduce our speakers for today. Alicia, will you introduce yourself briefly?
Hi, hopefully you can hear me okay.
Great.
Like a very typical thing that we've all gotten used to saying, can you hear me, can you see me? But in any case, thank you so much for the invite tonight. I really appreciate it. My name is Alicia Ramos, and I work with LA County Department of Public Works on their CAP projects. My portfolio includes a lot of healthcare projects, mental health. We have fire stations, sheriff stations, jails. I've worked on a lot of basically public building types in the past. So very happy to be here and looking forward to the discussion tonight.
Thank you, Alicia. And our next presenter will be Jennifer Reynolds.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer. I am the operations director at Wolcott Architecture. I'm a licensed architect, so don't let the fancy title fool you. Wolcott does a lot of different types of stuff, but mainly workplace. So corporate workplace is our main kind of bread and butter. Throughout my history, though, I've done a lot of different types of stuff. Anything from private and public work. I worked on the Taper renovation about 10 years ago. A few downtown ground up projects. I've done a lot. I worked for a company that did grocery stores, which was a really interesting kind of way of approaching architecture and retail strategy. And now I'm at Wolcott, and I've been here about 1.5 years, and I love it. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jennifer. And then I will be the test subject later today for our mock interview. And I already introduced myself, interior designer at Wolcott. And I'm going to pass the mic off to Jennifer Reynolds.
Thanks. So we're going to go through a few different aspects of the interview process. And we're going to have Alicia kind of chime in about differences between kind of interviewing for a public works company versus private company. So there are some subtle differences and there are some obvious differences. But we have this broken up into 3 different parts: the before the interview itself, and then after the interview. So I will take you through each one, and we'll have a great discussion. So before the interview is a key essential part of the interview process. So you basically have been either invited to submit your resume, or you just kind of coldly looked on one of those platforms where you've seen where somebody's hiring. And so you've decided for whatever reason that you want to submit your resume, which is great. But in any case, you should do your research. So research. You should know the firm's background. And this might be where something Alicia can chime in about the county part. But private firms, they usually have websites, there's social media sites, there's internet research that you should do to find out, what kind of projects they're doing, what they're like, how they exude their presence in the world. Are they focused on specific types of sectors in the marketplace? Or are they doing a lot of different things? Or are they just doing one type of thing? That's something, one thing you should know before you're going into the interview. You should also try to look at their social media aspects to see how they highlight promotions or people, or celebrate different things in the office, which is really great. It gives you kind of a sense of their culture. Sorry, Alicia, did you have anything else to add?
Not in particular. I think that all very much applies to even the county sector, public sector employers. Research, you can't underscore that enough. You really want to go in there understanding what it is that you're applying for, or what that job description includes. And if you need more information, for instance, with LA County, there are websites you can go to. Certainly reach out to somebody within the organization if you need to, but yeah, research is key.
Oh, that's one aspect I didn't think I forgot to mention, is that if you're already in the industry, try to just reach out and see if you know anybody that has worked there, or a vendor that might actually go to both your current office and this other office that you're applying to. Those are other vendors know kind of a lot about different firms. They get to know the designers really well. So there's a lot of ways you can kind of find out little tidbits about that firm. Okay, the next section is know the job description. So there's a job description that's probably, if you printed it out, maybe 1 to 2 pages long, and understand all the key aspects of that job description, meaning even if you don't have all the skills, that's okay. Nobody's going to have 100% of the skills, but understand what skills you do have and why you're applying to it, and formulate questions, and be really transparent about like what you don't have the skills of, because they really appreciate, I think a lot of firms really appreciate that aspect of your, you want to learn more about X, Y, and Z in this job description. You've only had minimal experience, but you have had other experiences that do apply to this job description. And then formulate your questions and write them down. We're in this Zoom world, so what you guys aren't seeing is that I have notes here for this presentation. You can have notes for yours as well when you're doing your interview. Okay. So you've done your research, you understand the job description now. You really need to tailor your resume to the job. So don't use your research, start with your most relevant work. So if you're applying to somewhere like Wolcott that does corporate architecture, you want to show that types of project typologies first. You don't want to show the little, ADU remodel you did for your mom. That's just not going to fly. You want to send some work samples. Don't send your entire resume. I don't want to look at an 80-page resume. I want to look at, most relevant work samples, and call it work samples. And then you can say, I can provide additional information as needed. If the job is a technical job, like say a job captain job, you want to show not just end products, you want to show part of the process. So show some relevant project implementation drawings, color palette drawings, like all the things that you did to develop that project is really important. So just, a little smattering of everything, then that gives enough, that gives the interviewer enough to say, okay, I want to see more. You can link to your full profile online. So if you have a website for yourself, it's fine to put that in a link in there, but you still want to show a few pages of work samples, because when I put a job posting out, I'll get 20 to 30 resumes, within the first couple of days. And the ones that are really succinct and well put together kind of clues me into that person really kind of understanding their audience. And that's a green light for me. It's like, okay, I want to talk to this person because they're kind of really getting what the job is, showing me the type of work that would be relevant for that job. Also keep a log of who you sent to what. So if you're redoing your resume 3 or 4 different times, let's say you're doing a county application versus a private that concentrates on housing versus corporate workplace, you're going to rejigger your resume a few different times to be relevant to that. You're also going to rejigger it and update it in order to be relevant for that project type. So if you're applying for a job captain versus the designer role, you might have skills for both, but you really want to kind of make sure that you're honing in on what the requirements are and updating your resume. So keep a log of who you sent to when, so you don't get mixed up. And then the PDF, I wouldn't send anything bigger than 12 megs as an attachment. It's just, I had a student once send me a 600 megabyte file and it was crashing my machine. So be cognizant of what you're sending. Okay. Write a compelling letter to the HR person. State why you want this position and do your research. So this is where your research into the firm really comes in handy. I would say you particularly liked a specific project or the way that they, you know, talk about their employees, or something that makes me understand that you really like looked at what, you know, who Wolcott is, and it's not just any other firm. Okay. So resume don'ts. Some don'ts are, don't send the same resume to every firm. We kind of went over that. And do not be a robo resume sender. This is what I mean. So LinkedIn somehow has a magical ability to use keywords like the name of our firm to say, anytime a Wolcott posts the job on LinkedIn, I'm going to send my resume in. So I've gotten the same resume by the same candidate for about 10 or 12 or 15 different positions, anywhere from like an admin assistant all the way to like the principal level. And then so I see that person's name is like on my radar, and I'm like, delete, 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 delete. I just won't even, it's like spam. So don't do that. Again, don't send your entire portfolio, send select pieces, and do not send Word documents. So send a PDF. If I get resumes that are just left in Word, that tells me that person doesn't know how to use technology. So definitely, and don't send an Excel file, God forbid. So send a PDF. Okay, so you have sent your resume in and you got asked to do an interview. So the way that we work at Wolcott is that we have a 3-tier interview process. Before the pandemic, we had a phone screen. So it wasn't on visual, but I would have a conversation with that person if their portfolio and resume looked like it could be a good match, to see how well spoken they are, how they, you know, present themselves, you know, just to understand, you know, who they are, or a little bit before I kind of bring them in for the team to interview. So that's kind of the process. Now during COVID, that kind of changed because now everybody's virtual. So I will do a virtual interview first thing, which is kind of my substitute for the phone screen. But this is kind of just getting you in the door to get to the next level where you're going to interview with 2 or 3 or 4 other people. Alicia, do you have any thoughts on that? How does it work at the county?
Well, yeah, and I think it's a good time to just distinguish. They're very different processes, even though you may be with a similar background, architectural design. With the County of Los Angeles, being the county, a very large public entity, we have to standardize just about any process that we do so that we can ensure equity in the process. So a lot of what you're going to experience with a public agency, and I'll speak from the county's point of view, is that you're going to find yourself within a very mechanized system. So as we talked earlier about sending in resumes, you can send a resume into the county, but you're going to go through the application process. And so the county has a very methodical county application. It'll ask all the questions that our HR department, and keep in mind, there's an HR department that has really no clue what it is you're applying for. They're looking at it from a very mechanical standpoint and checking off boxes. We asked for a degree in this subject matter. Is it there? Yes, it is. We asked for 2+ years of experience. There it is. So you're going to find yourself first with that upfront process of the county before you get to an interview. Once you get to the interview, though, that's where a lot of this starts to become common in experience, very similar. So you can come to your interview with that resume. You can come to that interview with your portfolio. Understand that, again, with the county still following a methodical process, you're going to have interviewers there, generally 2 interviewers. They're going to ask you a standard set of questions that they'll ask to every candidate, because that's how we make sure that there's a standard applied. But you can certainly bring those materials with you. Those interviewers may or may not want to see it. Some are very methodical and say, look, unless everybody has a portfolio, I don't look at any of them. Others don't mind seeing them. So you're going to find yourself with probably a more administrative process. But once you get to that interview, I think you can start to do a lot of what Jennifer's already mentioned, and make sure if you want to show that material, bring it with you. It will be looked at if you make it a point to say you really want to show something.
Okay, so like I said, this phone screen process has kind of been replaced by the virtual interview, and I don't think that's going to go away. I think we're going to kind of keep going with a virtual interview as the first screen, even maybe the second screen. We're just finding it easier where I'm trying to get 4 different people in the same room, and we're all, you know, different parts of the city because we've been at job sites. So I think maybe even the first round of, once the screening process has been taken care of, I think the second interview is probably going to be virtual as well, and then the third might be in person. So virtual interview best practices. Make sure you have the right app. So I get invited to all different, you know, Google Chrome, Slack, and blah, 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 and there's all kinds of stuff out there. I mean, I think there's a standard Zooms, but, you know, when you get the invite, it'll probably tell you what you're going to be doing on, and make sure you have that app downloaded and you've tested it with a friend or, you know, your significant other, so you're not struggling, you know, during the interview process. Because why do you need more stress? You don't need more stress. You want to just concentrate on how amazing you are. So also check your backgrounds and lighting. So I have not experienced a bad one yet. I've experienced cats running across the screen, which is kind of funny, but I haven't seen somebody like show me their dirty clothes in the background. But I can imagine maybe, you know, you're not totally aware of your surroundings. So if you're not comfortable, there's a blur background, or you can do a virtual background. You know, those are available too. Check your lighting too. Just, you want to be able to see your face. I actually, about 10 years ago, I was doing an interview, and it was like I had to do it virtually because I was living in Florida at the time, and I got myself all ready, and I was living in Florida, and there was a huge thunderstorm that came by. So I had all the great lighting in front of me, and Florida, like, the storm can go by at any time, and it went like totally black, and I looked like a haggard person because it was just like black. So it was like, I'm so sorry. And then started thundering and lightning, and it was like just a horrible interview. So you can only control so much in your life, but just check your lighting before you kind of go there. Also check your connections. I live in a house that has kind of spread out, and the Wi-Fi doesn't work so great in some areas. So just, you know, double check that. So as well, you don't want to like be, you know, what did you say? You know, I can't hear you kind of connection kind of thing. So just to do your due diligence, you know, so you're not stressed, because the last thing you want to do is have to like deal with technology when you're giving that interview. Okay. So if you got into the next round where you're in an in-person interview, make sure you've left enough room for traffic and prime parking. Give yourself at least an extra 30 minutes. We all live in LA. We know anything can happen. If you're going to be late, call and say, I'm going to be late because there's an accident on the 405. Hey, we all live here. We know what that's around. Verify the address. So I can imagine at the county, I'm not sure how it works with Wolcott. We have 2 different addresses. We have a downtown address and a Culver City address. And more than once it's happened where something gets crossed, the wires get crossed, and they are in Culver where they should be downtown or whatever. I'm not sure at the county if it all happens at the same place, or if there's different, you know, satellite offices for that interview process.
Yes, at the county, you would be interviewing at the location of the prospective place of employment. So if you're applying for a position at Public Works, you'll do the interview at Public Works. We process the paperwork, the applications at our downtown human resources, but you will in fact be at Public Works for your interview. And absolutely underscore everything Jennifer said. Give yourself that extra time. Being late is something that many people, it implies so much more about your time management, about your professionalism. There's a lot of things read into that, and it's so simple to miss it if you don't give yourself enough time.
Okay, so now you have arrived and you've sat down and you're getting ready to do this interview that you're gonna kick butt on. So you're going to want to do a few things. You're gonna wanna introduce yourself, and Abby and I will go through kind of a mock version of that, but you just wanna give a casual, who you are, why you're here kind of thing. Keep it succinct, don't drone on and on and on and on. And you can just be at whatever comfort level you have. I like to include, where you went to school, where you grew up, if you've moved to LA, how long you've been here, just something, that you're comfortable. If you want to mention, we're not, as an interview, we're not allowed to really ask if you're married or anything like that. It's part of the law, but just whatever you're comfortable, but again, just keep it 1 to 2 minutes, and you can also bring up any unique passions. Be like, I love to go on hikes, or I love surfing. That just makes it kind of stick a little bit. That's the person that loves surfing, or that's the person that loves to cook, or that's the person that loves to do needlepoint. Just anything, just kind of to help the process make you unique. Okay, so now we're going to go through some questions that you will get on the interview process. Maybe Alicia will kind of talk about, it might happen in a little bit different way through the county, but I'll just go through what I typically ask. And the first thing we want to know is, why do you want this position? Like, what's interesting you? What made you want to apply to here? So have a really good answer for that. And that's where your research again comes in. So you could use the types of projects the firm is doing, or their social outreach programs. You can do architecture or interior design anywhere. Why do you want to do it here? And then why do you think you're a good fit for this position? Like, just tell us why. And that's where you really need to know the job description, and bring up a few key aspects of the job description and say, oh, well, the job description said this and this and this, and I have experience with those things. You want to be really kind of precise there. And then this is a hard one, maybe if you're not a student, but if you are leaving a current position, have a good answer, for that. You don't want to be complaining, be like, oh, I don't like my boss, or I don't get along with my coworkers. That's a big no-no. But you should have a really good answer of why you want to kind of pivot, your career. So what?
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Just to dovetail onto that, Jennifer. These are all very good questions that you will find yourself within the county also being asked. But I do want to emphasize that's for your research, and Jennifer mentioned it. You're going to want to reflect on that research, because you're going to want to tie it back to what is the position asking for. So try and make the responses here very relevant, so it does appear as though it's not just what you like, but it matches up with what the position is. So when they ask you, why do you want this position?
Good point.
Take that opportunity to put a little bit of meat to the answer, not just, I've always wanted to be an architect. Okay, well, I've always wanted to do this type of architecture, or, relate it somehow to something that brings it around to why this position fits so well with you. Why do you think you're a good fit for the position? Try and bring it back to some of the spec information, the description of the job. So I'm not trying to say, don't embellish to the point that you're lying, but I assume you wouldn't apply for this position. If you did your research, you wouldn't be applying unless it was something you wanted. So just try and put something more into your answer, other than I just think it would be fun. Try and bring it back to, what were they asking for in the position? And, oh, this person fits that bill.
Those are great points. Thank you. The what. So now we're going to be asking you what kind of, we're going to ask you, what kind of experience do you want? What kind of career do you want? Do you want to be a really technical person? Do you want to be project manager type of person? Do you want to be in the design world? And it's okay to say I'm looking for all kinds of different types of experiences because I've been only doing one thing and I want to be doing something else. I think just have a really good answer. And again, your research and the job description should be tied back to Alicia's point, like that, you know, you're looking for experience and the job description says it would give me that experience and these are the aspects of that. Another what is your current responsibilities? So I want to know what you've been doing on a day-to-day basis. And so I understand your skill level. So look at the job description again, think about what you're currently doing in your current role and tie those two together. You know, we can go through some examples with Abby, but have some good examples for that. What do you hope to accomplish in this first 3 months here or 1 year here? That is a tricky question that the point of this question is to really understand, again, what you're looking for. So if you really want to be in front of clients within a year, or if you really want to be the best technical, you know, BEM person in a year, you know, like that, you know, lead the BEM efforts in a year, just have a passion. Maybe your passions can come up here as well. So this kind of leads into the next one. What are your career goals? I hear from the architecture side, well, I want to get licensed, you know, and the interior side, I want to get my license and this and that, which is good answers, but it's a little generic. You know, I would try to have a little bit more passion there about what your more, a timeline for your career goals. Be like, within the next 2 years, I'm going to get my license, you know, just be a little bit more, I don't want to say aggressive, but, you know, forthcoming about what those things are. So the next one is I always ask this question, what are your biggest strengths and weaknesses? And it usually throws people off. But have a good answer for both. And for the weakness, be like, oh, so I'm going to tell you, everybody tell you what my biggest weakness is. I'm not good at proofreading. I am just not. And I write all day long. I write 300 emails easily in a day. So I am not, especially when I'm doing multi things, I'm not a good proofreader. So I have this app that I bought myself called Grammarly that helps spell check and grammar check everything to be another set of eyes for me. So that's how I kind of get around that. So just if you're not good at something, it's okay. Be like, there's something that I'm not very comfortable with. And I want to grow and I want to learn, or, you know, this is how I'm overcoming it. That's a great answer. Strengths, I think everybody kind of knows what they're strong at. You know, it's what you like to do. Just think about what you like to do and you're probably strong at it. You don't like to do the things that you're weak at. so just have a good example for that as well. The next one is kind of a psychological question. It's what do people say about you? Like, what do people, you know, think about you? You know, are you the person that people can rely on? Are you the person that is a fun person in the group that gets everybody together to have lunch? You know, like just something, you know, about you, you know, that you're the reliable person that everybody comes to questions about, just something, you know, you want it to be a positive thing that you can kind of, it helps determine, you know, what kind of role you would have on the team, I think. And then what do you love and not love about your current position? So this is a tricky one too. And you're leaving your current position for a reason. So we want to say, okay, why are you leaving? You might not be getting enough diversity in the types of work you're doing, or you might be kind of pigeonholed in a certain aspect of the process of design. And those are okay. Be like, oh, I've only been doing CA work for the past 2 years and I really want to get back into, you know, the design realm, or the opposite. I've only been doing conceptual design and I really want to get into see things built. Those are great answers. So just understand what you're currently doing. And if you're a student, I think you can relay that to like, what subjects are you loving the most and not liking the most? I was not brought in this world to write specifications. I will tell you that right now. So it's not why I am here on the earth. So I am very clear about that. I can do it, but it's not what it's like nails on a chalkboard for me. I just don't like doing it. So, and I've done it. I was doing it this afternoon. So, just, you can be really clear and transparent about that. Okay, the hows. How have you prepared for this job? How are you qualified for this job? So, this is kind of going back to understanding what's in the job description. And it's also a technical skill thing. If it says, Revit, you need to know Revit, and you have been doing only CAD at your own firm, and you've been taking classes in Revit, that's something you could bring up. If you've been, working on design aspects, just bring those up. Just how are you qualifying yourself for this job? So here's another one I'd like to ask, and this is when you're showing your kind of work samples in the office. And sometimes I do it on a screening, like the second screening too, and I have their work samples in front of me. I was like, oh, why don't you talk to me about this project and a hurdle that you've had to overcome and how you overcame it, on the project. If, a particular detail was really tricky, or the egress, or, whatever you want to talk about. Be like, this was really tricky with the building department submittals. It could be anything. It's just, you just have pick a couple things out that you can talk about. So we really understand your responsibilities and that you really know that project. How do you prioritize your work when you have multiple deadlines? So this is a really good one, whether you're a student or not a student. So when you're in the working world, you're going to have more than one project, unless you're doing a high-end residential home. You might be on one project for that for a year or two. But in the corporate world, I'm not sure about the county world, but you'll probably work on several different projects at the same time. And this is a skill set that everybody needs to have. And as a student, you have it. You've been taking 4 or 5 classes at once. You have to juggle all of those different classes. You might have 2 exams on the same day that you have to study for, plus a thesis. You have that skill set. Just think about it and how you get through that. Some people make lists. Some people have, apps. What is your process there? And what do you do when you're in trouble? So I know when I was a student, I went to one of my professors, said, I have 3 exams in one day plus my whatever review. Can we reschedule one of these exams, or can I I just can't do all of it. And so you're taking charge of a problem that you can't resolve on your own. So you're saying, I want to suggest this or suggest that. Transfer that to work. That's called managing up. So you're managing up to your PM or your studio director and be like, I have, all of these things to do. I need help prioritizing. That's what the senior leadership is supposed to be helping you with. Be like, okay, let's break it down. Let's look at this. But we as managers want the staff to be doing that to us. Be like, I don't know everything that if you're overwhelmed by something, you don't have the right skill set, I want to know how I can help you, but you need to speak up and manage up to me so we can then help you figure out these issues and resolve them. How do you build relationships? So relationships there's all types of relationships in design world. The design world is a very, very small world. I end up being at different offices for a different engineer and that I hadn't worked with in 10 years. And I was like, oh my God, it's the longer you're in the industry, the smaller it gets. LA is huge, but the design community, everybody kind of knows what everybody else is doing. So we want to know how you build relationships, how you work with your coworkers, how you feel like you go out to the overall design community, how you're wanting to contribute to the team, So just think about that. You know, there's can be a lot of different answers for that, but I think it's an important thing to have. It's something that I didn't think about when I was like probably until my 30s. I started after grad school. I was probably 4 or 5 years in before I was like, oh, you know, relationships are hard. I was just kind of so focused on the work. I was like, you know, you need to kind of understand the community as a whole, and the community will come together and be like, I have a tile rep that I'm friends with. And I was like, I need tile here in 3 weeks. What can you do? You know? And so there's all kinds of things like that happen on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Okay. Review of your work. So be prepared to know what you're bringing to the table. Talk about your team as well. So we know that you don't do projects on your own. When you're showing us a project, there's directors, there's other job captains, there's all kinds of people that make that happen. And we want to understand what you were responsible for on this job, and be like, this is the entire drawing set. If you bring an entire drawing set, that's fine. But, you know, take a Post-it and flag a couple pages, be like, I laid out this page, or I did all the finishes, I did this, or me and one other team member did all of these things, you know, and then we're going to say, who picked all the finishes? And say, oh, well, and talk through that process. Say, like, I suggested the finishes, but then the studio director made the ultimate decision, or the studio director picked them all, but I was the one that figured out how they all go together. You know, like that's the kind of thing we want to hear. You know, how are you working with a team, and how does that meet your job responsibilities? Okay. Okay. Also, we want to hear you ask good questions. So do your research. Don't come to the thing, be like, what kind of projects do you do? You should already know that. So you want to, good questions. I hear from candidates are, how does the team structure work? You have to kind of, when I introduce who we are, I kind of go through all that. I say kind of there's these different sectors that we're in, and this is how the teams work, and kind of give that structure. But I don't know if everybody does that. So that's a really good thing. Can you walk me through how big the teams are? How do you get assigned a team? What kind of, and what is the relationship with the PM? What is just the organization of the company and the leadership? So you want to ask those questions. What is the firm culture? Like, what do you guys do for fun? How do you grow people at the firm is a good question as well. Well, especially when you're a junior, be like, what's that process? Project typologies, you can ask this question. It might be a better question for a public works kind of question. You should be on the website for our firm to see what the types of projects we do are. But if you know this project typologies, you say it's like, we do have a repositioning section, and be like, you could say, I'm particularly interested in the repositioning projects, or the workplace, or the healthcare projects, something like along those lines. Ask what kind of technology and platforms we're using. We're all in this digital age. Usually the job description will say, you need to know Revit, or you need to know the Adobe suite, or something like that. But also, I think it's more of a communication thing. How are you guys communicating with clients virtually? Those kinds of things. We're now required to do a lot more online with Google. I can't remember the platform right now. There's a few platforms that are project management platforms that they all kind of work the same way, but a client will be like, well, have you guys have any experience with this XYZ platform? And we kind of have to be honest and say, no, but we do use this platform and this other platform, and they all kind of work the same. So just kind of make you can do that with I'm sure you guys are all way better experts at this, managing this, than I am nowadays, with going to school virtually and all that kind of stuff. Ask what a successful candidate is. Be like, what are you looking for? It says on the job description. Is there anything else that you can tell me about the job that would make me understand what the responsibilities are, what a good candidate would be, those kinds of questions. And then how does the firm support staff development? I mentioned this before. So we at Wolcott have a review process that happens every few months rather than annually. A lot of firms just do annual reviews, but some firms have mentorship programs within the firm. We have a buddy program so you have somebody to just reach out to and ask questions that might not even be on your team, but just like, I can't remember how to do an expense report. It's been 6 months since I've done an expense report, like stuff like that, so you can ask those kinds of questions. Caution. So these are, Alicia and I had a big discussion about this. It's a little different from county to private. So when I hear what hours do you work, I hear I want to be out the door by 5 p.m. And it throws up a few red flags to me. But it can be different with the county work because I think it's more regulated. Alicia, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. So there's two different audiences, if you will. When you're doing the interview process, I think these questions are practical to ask in a county context because you're going to be interviewed by people who may or may not be the team you're going to work with. But when you ask these questions, the county is very much upfront about responding to those because we want to make sure it's a fit. If you got to be done by a certain time and out of there, then we'd want to know that right away. If there's a day you can't work or there's an area of the county is very big. And if you don't want to drive out to Lancaster, because you could very well get a project in Lancaster for 2 years. Okay, so if you don't want that, be upfront about what those constraints could be. And that just helps us know whether or not this is going to be a good fit or not. And to Jennifer's point, yes, with the county, things are going to be much more regulated. Before I went to the county, there was my time in private sector and stay in the office till 2 a.m. You do what you do to get it done. And that's what it's like. The reason I did go to public sector work was because I was at that point in my life where we did want to start a family, and having one person that had a more regulated schedule was just what worked for our household. My husband still does private industry. So these are things to think about as to, why you might apply to public sector versus private or vice versa. If you really want to get out there and see cutting edge design, you're probably going to gravitate towards the private industry. But to get back to this point, these questions for a county process, absolutely ask them if they're pressing for you. And there's definite boundaries that you have to keep in line, and there's no disadvantage to asking that.
So the reason why I say salary and benefits is caution, because it's a conversation you're going to have. I just wouldn't do it in the first round of, everybody's kind of feeling, it's like dating. You're kind of feeling each other out, making sure it's the right thing. You don't want to ask for the ring yet. So just be a little cautious there. It'll come. So that's a very different aspect than the county. Can you work from home? This is a hard one. Pre-COVID, we would have said no. It needs to be in the office. Post-COVID, we're going to say no. You need to be in the office. But we're going to have a hybrid situation. Just, again, you're starting a date. Just if you can only work from home, you need to be transparent from that. It might not be a good fit. You just have to kind of feel it out. No show. That's beyond caution. Show up to the interview or you're blackballed forever. So don't just show up. And again, try to be on time. So firms are looking for candidates that want to work. And so that's where that caution, if like, well, what time do you guys get off? It's like, they might be, they might not be the right candidate, but again, you kind of have to feel it out. If you're you have a family, you know, and be like, oh, you know, just, you can talk about that. Be like, you know, I can bring my work home, or, you know, you just have to kind of feel out what the firm is doing, and the type of firm it is. Have passion. Just don't be like, oh, I don't know, I want to just do architecture. Have passion about what you're talking about. Make sure you're well spoken. If you're a timid person that gets kind of flustered or nervous, you might want to do a mock interview with a friend. I did my first interview in like 10 years, and I did it with a couple of friends because I was like, I have to get my head in the right space, you know, so I think you just should practice. And if you're a person that gets flustered, just know that everybody's just a human. So be organized though. If you're kind of ruffling your papers and trying to find the right thing, and you can't find what you want to show them, that goes for your screen too. So if you're doing a Zoom call, have your portfolio ready to show, have your resume ready to show, you know, just those kinds of things, have it ready to go. We want people that are self-sufficient. So that means that you're not asking a million questions, that you're managing up in a way that is going to help the firm. We do like questions, but if we feel like you're just going to be flailing all the time, it's going to be a red flag. So that goes back to the organization. Be organized. Be like, when I have questions, I like to bulk them together. Then I go to my PM with the 5 questions that I have, you know, after I finish everything else. You know, those are kinds of things, you know, that we like to see, because it's making you efficient, self-sufficient, organized, and a good managing up process. And then people that are curious, feel like, I want to learn more about X, Y, and Z. You know, architecture is so vast, and design world is so vast. I can tell you right now, you know, I'm 20 plus years into the industry. I learn new stuff every day sometimes. And so I think people that just want to be in there and learn, constantly learning, is something that we get excited about. Okay. So the big ask. So I will ask you, I'm not allowed to ask you what you're making at your current firm. You're not allowed to ask that. But you are allowed to say, what are your salary expectations? And that's where you need to do your research. So if you're a level 2 designer right now, and you're applying for a level 3 designer or a job captain, there are different platforms out there that will kind of tell you what the salary ranges are, and based on the years of experience. The Glassdoor has it, salary.com has it. They're also like AIA has like, and I think AIDA has different tiers of what people get paid in different sectors. So what you get paid as a designer in New York is different than what you get decided in LA, because it's a different living situation. And so just do your research for that. So the next step is, at the end of the interview, you want to kind of just inquire, what are the next steps? Or you know, am I going to, you know, I would just say, what are the next steps for the selection process? And the interviewer is going to say, well, we're, you know, interviewing a couple other people. We probably get back to you in 3 to 5 days. And then you can say something like, well, do you mind if I reach out if I haven't heard back to you in a week or 2? And they're like, oh, they're saying, of course, that's what we want. So, you know, we don't want you to be forgotten about. So definitely take the reins there and kind of manage up to your interviewer. After the interview, send a thank you. State when you had the interview. Don't do it the same day. I don't know why that bugs me. It just seems like you're getting it off your list. Pause. You've thought about the interview. You've processed it a little bit. Send it the next day. and then state when you had the interview, say, you know, yesterday on May 24th or whatever it was. State in detail what you found interesting. So, you know, you've had time to process it and just what stuck with you at the interview. That makes us be like, oh, they were really listening to us. Oh, they really understood how we organize our teams. You know, anything little thing kind of helps. And then ask if they need any follow-up information, you know, a referral or, you know, any other project types. It might be brought up during the interview, but it's like, oh, can you please send me, you know, another, you know, some more technical drawings or what, something, you know, something along those lines, if you guys kind of goes in that direction. And if you don't have it immediately ready, that's fine. You can say, okay, during the interview, we talked about giving you X, Y, and Z. I'll have this to you by such and such date, you know, and give yourself a few days to do that. Don't say I'll have it to you in a month, because that's a red flag. Just say I'm working on getting that to you. I should have it to you in the next few days. So I think that's perfectly fine. And then send it. And then when you say you're going to send it. Okay, so you've had your interview, you've sent up your follow-up email, and a week has gone by and you haven't heard anything. Just reach out and say, listen, we spoke on X date and I sent you some information on this date, and I'm just wondering where you are in the process. And use the same email chain from before. Don't start a new email chain because life is too short. So, you know, just that helps the interviewer remember who you are and keep their emails like organized. So. Additional items to consider. Alicia, did you want to take this?
Yeah, certainly. So just put some additional items here in general to consider. Interview skills, it's a lot more than just talking, right? Even if we're doing it digitally, if we're virtual, they're watching the way you're moving. Jennifer had also touched on those things. Don't fidget with things. Don't put that nervous tension into shuffling papers. All of that's on display. And so while a little bit of nerves here and there are probably inevitable for anybody, do those mock interviews, you know, and go into it. A lot of people get nervous about interviews and say, oh, I hate interviews. You know, I think about it this way. When do you get the opportunity to go in, talk to somebody or a group of people, 40 plus minutes, and the topic is me? I get to talk about me for the next hour. You know, I can't even do that at home. So look at the positives. You get to go in there and talk about you, your favorite person, make it count, but give yourself that comfort level that what you're presenting is probably far less nervous looking than what you think. I know it's a kind of a form of stage fright, right? We're going in front of people, we're talking about ourselves, but give yourself that ability to kind of calm, because your body language is being looked at too. Interpersonal communication. Watch things like don't talk too much. Answer the question concisely. Make sure you're answering the question. If you get too focused on nerves, they'll ask a question and you'll realize I just talked for 10 minutes and I never answered the question. That's the sort of thing you want to get a little bit of practice on. Keep it in mind. If you have to ask the question over again, that's okay. You know, ask them if you can get a quick reminder, especially if the question is like 2-3 parts. You know, county is notorious for that. We'll ask a question that says, describe to us a time when you had to do conflict resolution that involved X, Y, Z. It's okay to ask, what was that second part, that third part? So use that to your advantage. And then writing skills. Don't negate that writing skills could be a part of your interview. When you're there in person for the county, we generally do ask for a writing sample before you go into that interview. That writing sample is given to the interviewers so they can read it. And that tells us something about beyond your talking, interpersonal communication. How good are you at writing? How quickly can we put you on a task that maybe you're not up front? Keep in mind, you know, I'm approaching this as though most folks that are on the call today are probably entry level into the design firms, into the architecture industry. So you're not going to be up front and center too quick. You're going to be doing a lot of that research in the background. You'll be writing out a lot of these proposals, and so your writing skills will be looked at. So keep that in mind too. My second bullet, conflict resolution questions. These are key these days. We went over some topics earlier about asking about culture. You know, I always say the building process would be so easy if not for people. People is the biggest component of what you're doing, right? We design buildings, but the people are the biggest component of really what our business is about. So conflict resolution, be prepared to answer those questions. Have that example of where you've overcome a conflict. And the conflict can be of a design nature, a product nature. Jennifer, you know, indicated a tile, representative in the tile industry helped her out. Relationship building is so key. It is a small world, and you will run into these people over and over again. Do not burn bridges, even if you have a conflict. Try and exit out of it without burning a bridge. I guarantee you it'll come back sometime later. So be prepared to talk about conflict resolution, and to whatever extent you've experienced it, try and come up with a good example of where you've had to do something to get over an obstacle. And then lastly, debrief. Not every interview opportunity is going to give you the chance to debrief. The county will, again, it's a very administrative process. So after we go through the interviews, any of that material that was used during your interview process, it'll be the list of questions that was asked. You'll get a chance to see some of the notes that were taken by the interviewers. Your reading or your writing sample, there may be notes on that too. That's all made available to you once the position is closed, whether you get it or you don't. And whether you get it or you don't, I still say get a debriefing. Even if you get the job, go back and see, where did you get those points for demonstrating strength? Where did those weaknesses come up? And it'll help you. So even if you go to an interview that maybe doesn't overtly give you that process, to Jennifer's point earlier, reach out. You can always ask and see if it's possible. If it's not, it's not. But if it is, 100%, I'd say do it.
All right, so it's for the section where we are going to do a mock interview, but are there any questions so far on the presentation?
I don't have a question, but I just thought it was very well done. I appreciate it. I kind of wanted to be here because I have to interview some people in the next few weeks, and I appreciate the feedback and what you're pointing out.
People hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Looks like, so number one, test your headphones to make sure they're working. Prior to them, I think they just ran out of batteries, so there we go. Let me see.
Now you're on. Oh, yeah, there you go.
So Jennifer is going to be doing a mock interview for me. No. And there we go. We'll go old school with the wire headphones.
There's nothing wrong with
I'm
those.
gonna turn the light. It's gotten really dark in here. There you go.
All right, I should be back online now.
Yep, we can hear you.
Perfect.
Good. You're good.
Perfect. Always charge your AirPods all the way through, but have a second set just in case.
Jennifer, are you taking notes yet? Jennifer.
All right. Now that we're ready, let's proceed with the interview.
You know, just to say, I mean, from the interview perspective, I think there's a lot of tolerance with the technology issues. I don't think you're going to get dinged by having an issue. It's more about you being the interviewee, just being calm and not, you know, overwhelmed by the situation, you know? So I just think, you know, doing the testing, getting yourself as comfortable as possible in the situation where you have to talk about yourself and sell yourself is what you want to really be concentrating on, and not earbuds. So, you know, so lesson learned.
Lesson learned.
Right? Okay, well, okay, so we're going to pretend that Abby does not work for Wolcott. And I have reviewed her resume and some work samples, and I thought she might be a good fit for an interior designer position with us. And so we're going to pretend that we're just meeting for the first time on the first round of interviews. So hi, Abby.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too.
So I like to start this interview process out by just hearing from you, like who you are and what you wanted to be doing. So why don't you start off, and then we can have a great conversation.
Yeah. I'm Abby Cridland. I am an interior designer with 6 years experience. I recently moved to Los Angeles from Portland, Oregon for more opportunities, more diversity in project types, and as well as some sunshine. I'm passionate about mentorship and design, and then how to form spaces based off of the needs of our clients.
Great. And so what about Wolcott do you find interesting? Like, why would you want to work with Wolcott?
Yeah. Well, I looked at the website, and I've talked to a few of my sales reps friends, and I noticed that there's a diversity of projects that align with my skills in different disciplines like public works, as well as my bread and butter workplace design. I've worked in workplace design as a creative outlet, but also on the tenant improvement side. And I just felt as though the disciplines aligned with my skill set.
Okay. And of the different type of projects, what do you want to be doing? Like, what kind of projects do you want to be doing?
Mm-hmm. I'm really passionate in hearing from the clients what they need in their spaces. With COVID, there's a different shift in what a workplace really needs. And to actually listen, hear the clients, and interpret that into a design that goes into details of what specifically works for them is what I'm passionate about and drives me.
Okay, just time out. You're supposed to be doing some bad answers too, so we can correct you. And you're not giving any bad answers.
I started with the headphone part, so I know.
That's what I was just going to say. It's like, yes, what happened to the bad answers?
Okay,
those are all great answers.
Yeah, next, okay.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask another question, and you have to give a bad answer first, okay?
Okay, great.
So what your current work experience, how are you a good fit for this position?
Well, I don't know. I have experience in workplace, and I think that would be good. It's hard to do bad answers.
It's hard to do that.
Okay, why don't you give a good answer then now?
Can you repeat the question?
So of your current work experience, how would you best fit in to the work we kind of do here at Wolcott?
Yeah, I have worked on multiple different types of workplace design, and I think that would align well with both your tenant improvement side as well as your design side.
Okay. And this is something I didn't bring up before, but how big of a team what kind of teams have you been working on, up to now? Is it the firm, I'm not familiar with the firm that you came from Portland. How big was that firm? And can you just walk me through the experience you've had with that firm and type of team that you've worked with?
Yeah, I have worked on a number of projects with my last firm, and it was generally an architecture firm where I was the sole interior designer on the team. So I'm used to being a part of the full process with other architects.
Well, that's great. So can you tell me a little bit about your responsibilities as being the only interior designer in a firm like that?
Well, my responsibilities were a lot of finish selections, some space planning, as well as some renderings for presentation palettes. I would run the gamut of all the way from conceptual design, working with clients, all the way through CDs.
So were you working with, can you tell me how the finishes you got selected would be implemented on a project? Were you doing the drawings? Was somebody else doing the drawings? How did that process work?
So can I preference the bad answer first? The bad answer is, I would say my bad answer would be, well, I did it all. I would do it all.
Mm-hmm. That's a bad answer. That's a really bad answer.
Yeah. My good answer would be, I would work on a team. As the sole interior designer, my responsibilities were towards finish selections. So I took charge of that finish selection. I did the research and I implemented it into the different designs, as you can see from this project here. And then I would go into depth of how I started with a finish and how it ended up being a construction detail. And then I would have a photo of the finished product.
And this is where I would be like, okay, can you walk me through a couple of the details that you developed? You know, if they were more technical, how did that who were you working with to get those realized? You know, that kind of thing. So just have a couple examples ready to go. So what are your career goals? What do you want to do?
The bad answer first would be just design and feel really needy in saying that I just really want to work for you guys. I want to work hard. I want to, you know, design everything and not incorporate like teamwork. My good answer is, my overall goal is I would really love to be licensed. I would like to get my NCIDQ license. Depending on the firm that I'm applying for, I'd either go into further explanation of what NCIDQ is, but since I know Wolcott understands interior design certificates, I wouldn't go through that. But my goals would be interior design and be a part of the full process within a project, all the way from conceptual design, all the way to completion, and be a part of the full process of that design.
Another bad answer I get sometimes is like, I want to do everything. I want to do everything. Well, you know, I want $1 million. So, you know, that's kind of like, I think you have to be really more, you know, you have to be really more precise about what you want. So again, a good answer might be like, especially coming right out of school, it's like, I want to get a lot of different types of experiences so I can understand what the different aspects of design has to offer. But in the short term, I really want to learn about X, Y, and Z, you know. What's your biggest strength?
My biggest strength is communication. I would like to do follow-up emails whenever there's a phone call. I want to make sure that I understand the deadlines ahead of time. And I want to be able to make sure that everybody on the team is on the same page, so then we can work as efficiently as we can. Good answer.
Okay.
Grading myself now.
What is your biggest weakness?
I'd say a bad answer would be not to have an answer for this. But my answer to this question in the interview was, my biggest weakness is spelling. spelling and grammar. And so how I combat that is I do have an app that I download on all of my devices. So that is Grammarly, that helps me with my spell check as well as my grammar. For any large projects, I'll normally reach out to make sure if there's somebody that can just double check my work before it pops out.
Okay. And what do people say about you? Who is Abby?
I'd say my friends would say that I have a terrible sense of humor with my bad dad jokes and puns and poor timing of my jokes. But overall, I'm a very passionate and very driven person that is goal oriented, that keeps me going every day.
Okay. And how do you stay organized? How do you juggle a lot of different deadlines?
Well, I worked for a firm that we had tenant improvements where I managed projects for a full suite of building, or a full group of buildings. So I'm used to juggling multiple projects at a time. And I keep myself organized by having not only a daily list every day of what my tasks are, prioritized by the deadlines, but I also make sure that on my calendar I have those large deadlines marked out so I can see ahead.
Okay. And is there any particular way that you build relationships with your staff or your mentors or anybody in the industry?
I'm very passionate about mentorship. I'm a part of AWA+D, the mentorship committee. I also like to volunteer for the ACE mentorship program, architecture, construction, engineering. So I build relationships with fellow mentors in all of those disciplines. And I like to have personal relationships with my coworkers and understanding how they work, and then have a, yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that that we haven't reviewed that you want to bring up or discuss?
That answer would be no. Not following up with those questions. During the interview process, though, I do have a few questions. How would you say that your culture shifted from this pre-pandemic world to this current pandemic world? And how does that culture affect the workplace?
Good questions. I don't know if I have a good answer.
No, you don't have to be, Jennifer. You don't have to be the answerer.
Yeah.
Normally when I ask questions like that, with the things that I try to ask are, I want to make sure that I'm asking something that they didn't already tell me in the beginning intro of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll try to hit on either current events or things that are important to me.
Yeah, so this is where if they didn't bring up the team structure or leadership or mentorship or anything like that, then you can ask those questions. And then, towards the end, it's going to be, what are your salary expectations? And so you should have a range, or if you're comfortable saying, well, I make X, Y, Z right now, and I'm hoping to match that or go higher, you can say that, but have a range ready, for that answer. And so, okay, great. Abby, it was really nice to get to meet you. Thanks for, usually our FYI, our first screen is about a half an hour. So just expect that. Sometimes it goes a little bit longer, but at least 30 minutes, so we're, thank you for meeting with me. We're going to circle the wagons here, and I'll get back to you with any next steps.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. I really appreciate your time and consideration. I'll be following up next week.
Okay, great.
Great. So that was our mock interview. One thing I do want to mention that I realized I did outside of the screen is I know I'm a rambler. And so one of the things that public speaking has taught me is to count on my fingers. So to make sure that I don't go past and keep rambling on, I'll count to 3 on my fingers. So to make sure that I'm hitting points that I want. So I think that's a good tool for everybody.
I think Jennifer should hire you. That
Oh,
was
good.
Done.
Yes.
Oh, good.
you
It
got
was
the
very
job.
realistic.
Excellent.
It was very realistic to our interview process. So I'm glad that we were able to share it and hope we learned something from this session.
Yeah, thank you, both everybody. It was really, really, really terrific. Really terrific. I think the thing I didn't hear, and this might have come up, but I think it's important to add that you should practice. You should practice with somebody to just so that you don't like blurt out some of these answers like the very first time you say some of this stuff is at the interview. It helps to practice some of that stuff and just take some of the sample questions that you heard and just, get a friend or somebody to just kind of pose some questions just so you get used to the back and forth, especially the hard ones. Like what's your weakness? Man, you should practice your answer to that one because that one is a really hard one, I think.
Yeah, and if I could, don't discount the bathroom mirror. You can see yourself in the mirror, and how many of us have done that, right? If you can't find the friend or the buddy in time, go in the bathroom, lock the door, interview yourself in front of the mirror. It will actually give you some positive feedback.
Yeah, I agree. The weakness question is a hard one to try and think of, but they understand you're human. And if I've already identified your weakness, then you also follow up with to help that, like she did. She said the Grammarly thing. If you've solved that problem yourself, they'll see you as a better candidate that way. So don't be afraid. I used to hate to say what I was weak at.
I mean, another thing is like, I just haven't had a lot of experience with XYZ. So I'm wanting to learn more about it. That's another good way to answer that question. I just haven't had a lot of experience in the field. A lot of junior people haven't. They just haven't had the going out to the job site and understanding how things are getting built, especially this past year with COVID. It's just been, not ideal. So just saying I don't have TA experience, I really want to grow in that area is a perfectly great response. So not just spelling. Although spelling is important and I'm not good at it. So
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions?
Yes. Hi, my name is Ksenia, and I guess my question would be, do you ever get put off by people who sound too braggartly in their interview answers? And because I heard you just now, Abby, kind of saying that you have an offbeat sense of humor, and that's very endearing. And yeah, I don't know if either of you could speak to that.
yeah, I mean, I've had interviews where people, I don't know if they're nervous or if they're just, it's their personality. That they just felt like they might not be a good team player. And it's not that they're saying the wrong things. It's just kind of the way that the energy they're giving out. And so I feel like it's harder on the Zoom calls to kind of really get that. And so, yes, I think I've gone, I usually don't use that as a screening process to say that person's not going to make it to the next level. I was like, let's just talk to them again, see how it goes, get some other people in the room. If I feel like they have the right skill set, that won't preclude me from like getting you to the next level. I think being late or not having, just saying not having the right, or I can kind of, because I'm a registered architect and been in the business for a long time, I can kind of tell if somebody's like, they can't explain something. I'm like, oh, they're kind of embellishing. I can tell that they're not, what do you call it? They're overselling themselves, I guess, and so I try to screen that out. So I think just being as transparent as possible, and because it's going to come out whether you get hired and then you're working for the firm for a month and be like, oh, this is not the right, not the right fit because I thought they could do X, Y, and Z and they actually can't. So I appreciate more understanding what you can and can't do rather than being sold something that you actually can't do, you know? And we're always looking for that honesty and just good team players. So just having that team player attitude is more important. Nobody's going to have everything. You should read the book Lean In by Sheryl Strandberg. It's a really good book about, is that her right name? Sheryl Strandberg, the one that the Facebook woman. Yeah, Sandberg. So that's a really good book to read about having confidence but also honesty at the same time.
Yeah, and if I could just kind of dovetail onto that too, it goes back to what was mentioned earlier. Be able to articulate what you did in a project, right? It's real obvious, you know, coming out of college, maybe you've had an internship or two, and just like Abby's bad answer, I did it all. To me, that's going down that role of braggart. Be proud of what you've done, but be able to kind of substantiate that and make sure it's accurate. You know, don't overstate your role in a project. And I think that's exactly what Jennifer and Abby tried to show you earlier, is give some details so they understand, yes, you were on that project. Here's what I did to contribute to it. And that'll keep you honest. That'll keep you, I think, out of that perception of being a braggart. So good question. And I think just a good way to wrap it around to what we said earlier and show that as an example.
Thank you so much. I have another quick one, if that's okay. I've heard that men project more confidence, generally speaking, in interviews than women, and they start to negotiate sooner and hold their ground more. And I'm wondering if you have any advice for us on how to bridge that gap.
I don't know. It's a hard one. I think know your audience. You know, I think knowing your audience is the most important thing. I think the salary expectation is the first thing that is going to kind of start that negotiation process. So I think just know that what you're worth. Just know what you're worth. You know, and if you come in as a junior designer and you're saying a salary expectation that's 20 grand higher than what the current market value is for a junior designer, is something that is going to be off-putting, whether you're a man or a woman. And you know, I've been in situations where it happens with both. So just know your audience. You know, I think when you get, especially when you're more junior, it's a little bit more straightforward, I guess, for the actually salary part of it. It's like, you know, a person with 2 years experience is going to make this, a person with 5 years experience is going to make this. When you get to the kind of upper echelons of when you're 15, 20 years, that's where I think there's a lot more, it's not as clear. It could probably range between 15 grand either way, depending on the type of experience you've had. So if you might be an architect or an interior designer that has 20 years of experience, but if you've only done high-end residential for our firm, it's not relevant. So it's not going to be you're not going to get that same level, you know, as you would if you went to another high-end residential firm. So just know, you know, understand that there's going to be differentiators between the different types of architecture or interior design that you can practice.
And if I could add to that, I think it's a great question because, you know, what's the essence of why we're here? We're all women, right? And that's a great thing to ask. What is the perception? In my experience interviewing, I've had just as many women and men do great in interviews or sink it completely. I've really not seen that there's necessarily a trend in gender, but to your point about confidence and what, you know, maybe perceptually people may assign to a man coming into an interview versus a woman, and you can't control that, right? Your interviewers are coming in with the perceptions they've got, and if by their nature they think a man is just going to be more confident, I mean, that's something that you really got to sit there and and see what you can do to build your confidence. There are things you can do. It's really interesting if you want to research and do a little bit more. You can take a look at some studies. Posture, power posture is a big topic when it comes to how women or people in general kind of make up for that confidence. Power posture is a concept. There are studies that have shown if you do the Superman position, which is basically the, hands on the waist, put those shoulders out, put the chest out, and you take that position, I think it's 20 seconds, as little as 20 seconds, increases your testosterone by 18%.
Yeah.
And when we talk testosterone here, we're talking about what makes us feel like we're going to go and take on the world. Man, woman, I don't care, right? But simple little things like that, play around with them, study it. If that's what you need before you go in there, just put that body posture to work for you, build that confidence, and take from whoever your inspiration is. Maya Angelou is one of my favorites in terms of literature, poetry, and she has this concept. She says, wherever you go, you take all your heroes with you. That's your grandma that thinks you can't do anything wrong. That's your dad who says you're going to nail this. That's Maya Angelou, who you don't even know, who says you got this girl, go in there. Those are the things that from a psychological standpoint, find those things that give you confidence. There's nothing corny about that. You don't need to tell the interviewers, but find those things. You go in and they give you that sense of settled, and you can go ahead and take on the questions.
That's great advice.
Yeah. I would suggest one thing just about salary and obviously I'm older, but in my salary, if you've already had a job and you had a salary, use that, what your range might be to your advantage, and always use the last job. You always want more money. And that's one thing men historically are good at. They're like, I'm going to do a new job and I need to make more money. That's kind of, so have that mentality. And you might want to start your low end at your former salary and say, well, I was at this is my low end of the range. A higher range would be here. And then maybe the offering firm could deduct where you might fall in that. But I just remember being taught that most of the time men will say, well, I made this before and I want more money here. And that is a confidence, unfortunately, that sometimes women lack. But start the low end should be your former salary or whatever you were making, if hopefully you had one job by now.
Yeah. That's some good advice.
All right. Well, it looks like we're right at 8 o'clock. Is there maybe one last question?
I have one question sort of about transitioning. So I've been in a small office for maybe a decade where we do a lot of residential and tenant improvement. How do you position yourself in an interview when you're going for, say, something that's corporate and maybe they do larger projects? Do you assume that she'll be sort of having to take a lower level job to be brought up to speed? Or do you just say, well, I'm a really good project manager and my skills are translatable? What do you do with that kind of gap?
It's almost the opposite. I almost feel like it's the opposite for us. We're mid-range, we're about 50 people. And the more successful candidates come from smaller firms because they do everything. So, versus like a Gensler or an HOK where you're kind of doing one thing for, there's a bigger team and you're just doing like one part of that thing. So I think saying listen, I'm going to be hands-on. I can do this and this and this and this because my current firm, I am doing all these things. I do project managers, I do design, I'm on the site. I've had all these different ranges of experiences, which is invaluable. Working at a smaller firm you get to do a lot. You get to do a lot of different things. Gensler is the big showy guy, that is, employs more architects than, all over the world. But from a junior standpoint, I really feel like working for a smaller firm, you're going to get a lot more, you're going to get a lot of different aspects. And so I wouldn't be intimidated by working for a smaller firm. I came from a firm that was smaller than Wolcott. And I just said, listen, I know I can do this job because I am already doing it at this firm. You know, it's a different amount of people, but I'm doing everything on this job list already, you know? And so I think you just have to sell yourself and understand how what your current skill set, what your current experiences are, how that transfers to this new position. So I think it's about just selling yourself.
Great.
And I
And
think
Thank you.
understanding
Thanks
the
a lot.
correlations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. That's helpful.
Right.
But just on the other side of that, if you do have work for Gensler, and we do get candidates from, like, you know, bigger firms, you know, they wanna diversify. That's what I hear is like, I just want to get more experience. I'm really good at XYZ, but I also want to get experience, and that's perfectly fine too. You know, you're not going to get deducted either way. It's just about, you know, like what skill set you can bring and how you want to grow. You know.
Yep. I agree.
Keep it simple.
I agree.
Well, thank you so much. This is great.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Abby. Good job.
Thank
Good luck
you.
on all
Thank
those
you, Abby.
interviews.
Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you, Alicia.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me, guys. It was a nice
Yeah.
evening. Thank you.
And Alicia, you're supposed to give the plug that the county is hiring.
Oh, the count. We're always looking for good talent. So actually in the chat, I did put the county job hotline and the website. So if you are interested in county, go ahead, check out the website or the hotline and you can see what's open. The county doesn't do a lot of design work. We're really more towards project management. So for those folks who like to really, you know, set the schedule, make sure everything gets done, project management is where we're really starting to look for new talent.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Abby,
Bye.
great
All
job.
right. And that's
Great
everything.
job.
Thank you all for coming. Have a
you.
great night.
All right. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, yeah, I saw.